Welcome back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And we're doing something we haven't done since we started the podcast. We're actually going to revisit one of our first episodes, right? It was probably the first couple of episodes back in October of 2021. We were like 3 episodes in, and we started talking about our core values, our company's core values. And when we started this thinking about revisiting a podcast, some of our concern was like, oh, that's what you do if you run out of stuff to say, right? I mean,
you're on vacation, you don't have any, you just quick throw it up there.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're not going to run out of things to say. I mean, me by myself, I could talk until you tell me to stop.
We've got plenty of things to say.
This is the Dan podcast.
I can't believe I've said this for a long time. Actually, I've said it on several podcasts. I can't believe people listen to us. Yeah. Truthfully, I'm grateful that they do, and I think we would maybe do it even if they didn't. But that being said, we haven't run out of things to say.
Yeah, we have not run out of things to say.
But also along those lines, when we started doing a podcast, one of the reasons we did it was to get a message to our folks, right? It was not meant specifically to be only internal, but it was driven by the idea that we've taken a shotgun sort of approach to communication, and we use the podcast as one of the means and methods for getting our message out for people to hear. And I don't know that, I don't know how you guys are with podcasts. I don't often go back and start from the beginning, right? I don't go back and listen to old episodes. And I think what we're thinking here is let's revisit some of these things that are really important to who we are, right?
You got to put them back to the top of the screen because, I mean, all my podcasts, it's the last episode pops up. That's just how the algorithm is set up.
Yeah.
And these are so important. These are the core that, we need to once in a while bring them back to the front because of what they are. We talk about windshield time. We talk about why we did this as a podcast. That was actually the first podcast was why we podcast. And this, I think, is episode number 3. But, we have new team members that maybe never heard it because it was before they joined us. Mm-hmm. But just to reiterate, and put through what we find most important as a team.
Yeah, and we thought about, looking at it and do we do the core values again? That's what we talked about. Let's do it on the core values. And then we thought, well, maybe we redo it or replay it. And the funny part, and Ford said it, actually, I don't want to steal his thunder. Ford said it, but I listened to the podcast and it held up. You know what I mean? Like there was no reason. I don't need to add anything right now. I think what we say at that point in that servant leader podcast, which is the one we're talking about,
right,
is it holds up. It's accurate. It's how it's a core value. It's why it's a core value. But I think Ford just nailed why it's important. We have continued to grow. So there are some team members who may listen to the podcast and may not have listened to this podcast. So the idea is we repost it and, we just provide a little bit of an introduction here, like Brian said, and just sort of talk through what you're going to listen to, but freshen it up a little bit with just hearing us talk in front of it. So that's where we are.
Yeah, yep, exactly. So this one is Servant Leadership. It was episode number 3, October of 2021. And Servant Leadership, not in any particular order, but if you look at our list of core values, is at the top, right? I don't think that's because we think it's the most important or certainly not the least important, but it is at the top of the list. So that's why we picked it first, I think, when we started doing this. And it is one that I believe, and you guys can say something here if you want to, but it's one that I believe speaks to how we expect to work, right?
Well, I think that, Dan and I were talking about a little bit that like all of our core values, there's a theme that runs through them, right? I mean, they're individual, but they're part of the whole type thing. And so, when you write them down on a piece of paper, that's the one that hit the top. It ties to the other ones tie to it. So there's no particular order or significance in it. But, that is the way, as we talked about in the podcast, these are the litmus tests that people making decisions, these 5-6 things are the things that if they have a question about how they should do something, if it's the way that we would do it, these are their guiding principles to be able to make those decisions.
Yeah, Ford had used an analogy. I think it was in the podcast that they were like the guide rails. Or he may have even said litmus test in the original podcast. But I like the guide rail idea, that it gives you the guide rails. And I said to Ford a little earlier, I said the funny part is each of them is basically, there's some similarity.
Mm-hmm.
But if you lay all of them right on top of each other, it creates a very clear path for how we want to operate and who we want to be as a company. And I think servant leader is a big part of that. We want to go out there and, we'll say it over and over again. The boots on the ground are what make this company go. It is not you, Ford, and I sitting in a room somewhere coming up with some great plan.
Right.
We can do that and fail miserably. But if the guys in the field can go out there and do the good work that they've done over the last 20 years, then we're going to be okay. And we're going to be successful regardless of whether I have a good bid or a bad bid. They can go out there and they can make a good bid bad and they can make a bad bid good. And that's how we do well as a company. That's how we serve the community, is by the guys going out there and leading and being, the best that they are at what they do.
Well, another thing we just were talking about the other day is that, like, literally challenges we've had in the past 6 months, past 16 years, if you hold it up against it, usually it's because it didn't fall within these.
Right. Yeah.
These might not have even existed when it happened.
Right.
Or whatever. But it's like, oh, you know what? That was outside of that. And that's usually where you get burnt.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the term policy-driven governance. And this isn't that specifically, because I would say that these aren't policies, but the idea of governance in policy is to only remove what you don't want people to do, and then allow them to do the other things. And I think that that's kind of what this does. It sort of sets the guidelines, like you said there, Dan, so that we're all running towards the same end goal.
I'm glad you explained that, because just by nature, I would have been against policy governance because it had the word policy and governance. It's trying to control me in two separate ways.
Well,
but then you explain it, and it's just telling me what not to do. I changed my mind. I like that.
Yeah. So as an and that's a whole totally different topic.
Dictionary for some words that are coming out now.
Yeah, Brian's throwing some stuff out there. He's just trying to confuse us.
Come on now. Yeah. All right. Anyways, revisit episode 3, servant leadership, and I think we're going to do this with a couple of them, at least, probably not in a row, but look for more of these episodes. And in fact, we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you got thoughts, send them in to the group, email, text one of us, and let us know if you got questions as we revisit these core values. If you're wondering where they came from, how we came up with them, what they mean to us individually. But we're going to, I think, kind of let the episode speak for itself. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you can go back and listen to it, or this one where, it'll be following us here shortly.
Yep. Here it comes. All right. Welcome back to the Berg podcast. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got Ford, Dan, and Brian. And we're going to talk a little bit about our core values. We thought we'd start here with the first one on our list. If you're checking out our website, bergcons.com. First one on our list is be a servant leader. And so the idea here is that we lead by putting the needs of others before our own. No task is beneath us. We actively seek out ways to help our team and partners succeed. So I just want to set that up a little bit. When we started the process of trying to establish what it was that was important to us as a team, as an organization, as leaders in the organization, we had a lot of help from some people who were good at putting fancy words down on paper and writing things for websites. But I'll start with you, Ford, and talk about what does that mean to you, being a servant leader.
Perfect. Well, the first thing I want to say is that, like, the reason for these items on this list is that as we have different people making decisions on a daily basis, these are the litmus tests about a decision if you don't know which way to go with something. So if you have a challenge and we like autonomy and allowing people to make their own decisions, these are the guiding principles we want you to use when you're making that decision. Being a servant leader is, in my mind, the way that you get the most out of yourself and the people around you. If you're trying to lead by, there's that old picture of the guy like standing on the front and everybody's like pushing behind him, and they're just working and he's just kind of staring out at the forefront. And this is not a way for a team. We use the word team around here a lot, not just employees or things like that. We use the word team, and that's because everyone is helping each other out. I've always had a saying that I won't make anyone do anything that I wouldn't do. I've been in the bottom of a septic tank. I fell into one time. That was a fun time.
That's a dirty job.
That is a dirty job. Mike Rose, dirty jobs.
That'd be a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
Another podcast.
Yeah, that's probably a safety issue we can deal with. But no, it's that I've seen in this business other companies, other people, and when someone isn't willing to help each other, it doesn't make it a good working environment for anyone. And so that's why I think that one is so important for everyone. It doesn't matter what your job title is, what your position is on the job, but many hands make light work. So if you see a guy doing something and you can jump in and help him for 5 minutes, he gets done faster, you get done faster. And instead of just standing there staring at him because that's not in your job description per se. All of our job description, we joke about, have like a line in them that say, or all the other tasks. And we really like that's in there, but it really means something because, whether it's plowing snow, digging dirt, anything that's, helping each other learn something new, learn a new piece of equipment, whatever it is, that right there is what it all leads back to for me.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things for me when I started working here was when you're hired, you're given sort of a job description and a frame of reference for what your role is and maybe a title. But one of the interesting things for me was we don't put titles on much of what we do, right? Yes, guys in the office, they don't have titles on their business cards. Yes, guys in their field, one of the funny bios I remember was Gary Rambo's bio, right? And it's like, well, they call me a superintendent, but basically I'm a foreman. I lead a crew and establish what's supposed to happen here on the job, and that was always funny to me, right from the onset, because everybody wants to know, well, what's your title? What's my title? And the reality is when you're embracing these things, when you're being a servant leader, each one of us is called to lead, no matter where we're standing. So, we got to run cables for a building that we're adding some offices. Who's gonna do it? Who has time to go do it? We get out there and we pull cables. If our foreman is down a guy or he needs some help in the field, he jumps in the machine, right? So I think that's part of what being a servant leader is being willing to fill the gap, to jump in, take responsibility, and own what has to happen, even if it's not normally your title, your responsibility.
I think from my perspective, it's also when you're looking at how we operate, I think there's a real strong understanding amongst the people in the office that the people in the office don't get the job done, right? The more that the world and your title would say that you're of some importance, that you have some impact, the less actual impact you have on us doing anything to get work done or be successful. The people who are most important to us getting our work done are the people doing the work. So the best thing we can do as leaders is try and service that group of people to support them in a way that they can get the work done. Because at the end of the day, if they don't get the work done, there's no job for any of us to have. There's no repeat customer. There's nobody that wants to utilize our services. Our services happen because the guys in the field every day go to work and they get the work done. So I think for me, that's one way when you step back and look at the servant leader model that it makes so much sense, is because it doesn't really matter what you do, what line of business we're in, but the boots on the ground, so to speak, get the work done. So if you're going to stand in front and be really thrilled with yourself at how great you are, you're not going to get very far because nobody's going to support that, and you're not actually facilitating anything to get done You're just trying to put people in the right position. So I think it really became important to embrace that and realize and accept, that that's the way it is, and that's how we're going to run, and that's how we're going to operate.
Yeah, I think back to that, with the field staff and, it's been hot this last couple of weeks, real hot. And like we had to send out reminders for people about the temperature because, people can dehydrate from the amount of sweat and stuff. And, unfortunately or fortunately, but, the office people in offices in general have a temperature controlled facility. And that message came out from us because as much as someone might take that the wrong way, it was really about us trying to help them. We're here as a support staff. We do things what we can to help them out in all ways. And we also are the people in the back end with the paperwork. They're getting the actual work done. We're just making sure that the bills get paid, that the new jobs are coming in, and all the stuff we can do. Scott Manning's on the technical side, supporting the whole team. The young ladies downstairs are supporting the different functions, and it's all just supporting each other is what really, the man next to me or the lady next to me on either side is who is the most important thing, not what your job title is. If you have a truck, don't have a truck, things of that nature. I saw someone being a servant leader a couple months ago. A new guy got in a piece of equipment and, with great enthusiasm, he wanted to do it, but he just didn't have this. He didn't understand that piece of equipment. And one of his team members jumped up in there, showed him everything, rode with him for a little bit, and helped him learn a new piece of equipment to run. And that was definitely an example of servant leadership, because he could have sat back and watched him, maybe laughed that he messed up the piece of equipment, but he jumped in, he called him after a little bit to make sure he was doing okay. And that really, I thought, was a great example internally that I saw within the team of just working with each other and trying to help everyone else out.
Yeah, what a great show of leadership, right? I mean, it would have been pretty easy for that guy to say, hey, get out of my way. You're slowing us down. I'll just do it myself. But instead, took the time to show a guy what to do, how to do it right. And hopefully now that guy can repeat it and have a little independence and be a contributing member of the team, right? In other ways. So. Yeah. You guys mentioned a second ago, like that sort of that separation, right? It exists everywhere, but I think especially in construction, you see the separation between what happens inside of the office, so to speak, and what happens in the field. Creates sort of a unintentional but visible division at times. And just talk about how the folks inside the office can be servant leaders as well.
Well, I think the servant leadership there is that in everything that they're doing, they're laying out a plan for the most part for the people to get their job done as quickly, as efficiently, as easily as possible. The jobs in the field are tough, the temperatures, the hours, the challenging sites, all of that kind of stuff. But the leadership and the servant part of it is people in the office are using their time to try and make that job as easy as possible. And it's not always going to happen, but that is what they're looking out into the future to try and help make sure there's not a problem, or lining up trucks or any of that kind of stuff. That's helping the staff that has to do the work get it done in the best way they possibly can. And so I think that's one of the huge ways that I have air quotes here on a podcast, which doesn't work, but the management of the different divisions, that's really what they're doing all day, is trying to help make the job in the field go as best they can. And, in construction, nothing goes the way it's planned. So they're constantly on the fly, having to update, tweak, adjust, move personnel, all that kind of stuff, all to try and help the people in the field get their job done.
Yeah, perfect. And that's everyone, right? I mean, everyone from the human resource staff to the accounting staff to the actual estimators and direct support to our field. I think one of the things that's important to remember is the role so that like HR plays really is to make sure that the guys in the field can focus on what has to happen in the field, right? They don't have to think as much about their benefits and is their paycheck going to be right, and is their new health insurance card going to show up in the mail or not. And so I think that's a great example of how, by being a servant leader, taking charge of responsibility to help others can make the wheels spin a little smoother.
Yeah, and I think, when you look at it, we can try and break down individual roles and how it plays out. But at the end of the day, what you're really looking at, from my perspective, with servant leadership is almost greater good, right? It's this idea that if we all just work together and pull in the same direction, then we can be successful individually as well as a group. And, there was a line. Greg Schiano was coach of Rutgers for a while. Now he is again. And he had a thing, do your job. And being from Jersey, sometimes that can come off, almost obnoxious when you say, like, do your job. But it's not how it was meant in that context. And I say it often to some of the guys in the field. And I have to always put a caveat on that where I explain what I mean. To say, when I say do your job, I'm not telling you, hey, just do your job. There's such value in each role that we have. And each role is so integral to the greater good, moving in the direction that we need to move, that if you can just focus on doing your piece, which is integral to everybody getting done, then everybody moves forward. And I think for me, that's a good sort of relationship to sports, which always helps me, as well as a visual that lets you sort of see the greater good and see that's what we're looking for at a servant leadership in my mind, is we're looking for everybody to do their part and then help in any way you can with everybody else. And don't put yourself above the greater good of the team, and just do what's best for the team, because at the end of the day, that's going to be best for you too.
Wasn't Schiano the keep chopping wood, right? Wasn't that?
He was.
Yeah.
Just keep chopping, which is another. I mean, he's somebody that I really like in terms of the motivational aspect of what he did. Whether he's a good coach or not, a good recruiter, he worked on those sort of things. Keep chopping, you know what I mean? Which is that's another great analogy that I don't use that one.
Yeah, right. Perseverance, sure, for sure.
So,
So the last thing in here, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Last thing in here in this sentence, it says, being a servant leader for our partners' success. So I just wanted to bring that up and mention that for a second. So we talked a lot about internally, helping our teammates, propping people up. I got a saying that I picked up somewhere along the line from coaching, standing on shoulders, not on toes. But what do we do to make to be servant leaders for our partners?
Well, unfortunately, the current construction climate is very adversarial. That is what it is. But even within that challenge, our clients, we can do a lot of one-off jobs for people and not get another job from them, and that doesn't really work well for anyone. You don't have any familiarity. You don't have the trust, because you have to build trust every time you get a new client. But if you can do things in a way that doesn't affect the work we need to get done, but you can do it in a way that works with the partners, as far as the clients, as far as the subcontractors, as far as the engineers or the inspectors, working with people always gets you much further than working against people. And there's times where we might be right, but you know what? If we can move that stone pile 10 feet to the left and let somebody get through, even though it's not really going to affect us, it's just a hassle, but we can do that, we're helping the job get done. And everything's about getting something completed. And so that's where I see this really working, is that I'm not saying we have to go outside of our scope if we have a particular scope. But I think we can do our scope in a way that still works with the other people around us. And it can be very challenging, because sometimes people will try and take advantage of that, or it just doesn't seem like they're understanding how we're doing that. Or maybe we do it really well, and then we still don't get the next job for the client. So that's always a challenge. But it just seems that jobs that have everyone working together go so much better than jobs that constantly have people just stepping on each other's toes.
Yeah. So, and I'll go back again to the greater good thing here. When a client feels like we're involved in the job and we're working together to try and get it done, they get that same feeling, the same feeling we're trying to achieve every day within our own team. So even as an example, it'll sort of date the conversation, but right now we're working on Viwinco. And guys are doing a really nice job down there. We've hit rock. We sort of knew that we would hit rock. And I don't want to get too into the operation side of the rock, but we thought there was a better way that Ford and Colt had seen. Hey, we've seen this device. We had talked about it before, a specific tool that might do a better job in it. And quite honestly, it's going to be more efficient. It's going to reduce the quantity of rock that we would break. It will accelerate the process. Each of those things is not in Bergs' inherent best interest, right? I mean, like, we're a company that's here to make money. We have a cost for rock. And if I hammer more of it, or it takes me longer, depending on whether it's, yardage or T&M, both of those things would be better for us in terms of generating more top line revenue. But having said that, it was the right answer for the client and for us to say, we have a better way to do this. And it's going to be better for you. It's going to be quicker. It's going to be cleaner. It gives you a more usable product. It never really factored in whether it was more profitable, because that wasn't what we were trying to achieve. What we were trying to achieve is be a good partner, be a team player. The greater good of this project, let's stay on schedule and reduce what we have to do and get the job done for the client. And that sort of speaks to that same point that we're trying to drive home across in governing our decision making. And I think that's a pretty good example of what Ford was talking about, that when we're trying to have people feel autonomous enough to make a decision, that they can know that, in that decision, there's what we decided. We decided that in lieu of more billing, we're going to be more efficient and better for the client and get done.
Yeah, and it's important, right, for our guys. And in each one of these scenarios, if we approach these things like it's just another job, just moving dirt, just hammering rock, whatever it might be, we sort of fail to realize how important this project is to our client. They've got some dream. They've got some revenue generator. They've got something that's important to them to get done. And they've chosen us to do the work. So coming alongside of them, embracing the importance of what they're trying to accomplish, and understanding that we get the opportunity to play a role in recognizing what they're doing, I think is something really valuable, something fun.
And I think that ties also to like the community piece. Like every job we're doing, we might be putting a pad on grade or putting a sewer line in, but as a lot of our social media posts we're trying to explain is that like that sewer line we put in, someone is using a restroom in that house or that building or whatever it is, or that pad is more jobs for the community. And like, even though we're a piece of that pie, we're still a piece of that pie that has to get done so that somebody will be using that project for something in the future. It's not just to make a flat field. Even if we make a flat field for a soccer field, that's for kids to play on, but it's all about creating more new stuff for the people around us to make the community a better place.
Yeah, I got a feeling this is one we could talk about for a long time if we really wanted to. But truth of the matter is, being a servant leader is important to us, and feels like every time that we get the chance to partner with those around us for success, it makes us better at our job and better at who we are. All right, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.